The floorboards groaned beneath Karen Mitchell's polished designer loafers as she tiptoed through the front door, clutching a brass key that shimmered in the afternoon light. Adjusting the HOA president badge pinned proudly to her blazer, she lifted her phone, ready to snap photos of what she dramatically called unauthorized interior decor. Her first target, the abstract painting hanging above the fireplace. Clearly, in her mind, an affront to community standards. She was halfway through photographing what she deemed offensive throw pillows when two uniformed officers stepped out from the hallway. Their badges caught the same light as her stolen key. Hands resting near their holstered weapons, the officers regarded her with a mix of professional caution and confusion. Karen froze mid-motion, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. My name is Marcus Chen, and I had moved into Oak Ridge Estates just 3 months after my divorce was finalized. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Quiet streets, pristine lawns, smiling faces, until I met Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. My first citation came within 48 hours of moving in. The offense? My curtains were visible from the street. According to Karen, the HOA required that all interior decor maintain aesthetic appeal from every possible viewing angle, including through the windows. She delivered that warning personally, clipboard in hand, smile tight and rehearsed, as if issuing a royal decree. I thought she was joking until she handed me a printed violation notice on official HOA letterhead. After that, the citations came like clockwork. My mailbox was the wrong shade of black. My garden hose coiled counterclockwise instead of clockwise. My recycling bin was off by 3 degrees, 87 instead of the mandatory 90. Each violation came with heavier fines and long, pretentious letters quoting subsections of an HOA handbook that I was fairly sure she was writing on the fly. Eventually, I kept my blinds closed just to avoid her prying eyes. But that, apparently, was another offense, creating a hostile exterior that decreased property values. Karen's obsession with interior inspections began subtly. During HOA meetings, she'd brag about how some cooperative neighbors allowed her to tour their homes to ensure compliance with the unwritten standards of excellence. When I politely declined her invitation, she looked genuinely shocked, like it had never occurred to her that anyone could say no. The requests became more frequent and more aggressive. She'd show up unannounced, claiming there were anonymous complaints about strange smells or suspicious noises requiring immediate investigation. Each time I stood firm and refused entry, citing my right to privacy. That's when things went from harassment to something far more invasive. I started noticing subtle signs someone had been on my property. A flower pot nudged slightly to the left. Fresh footprints in my mulched garden beds, too large to be mine. Then came the final straw, muddy footprints leading from my foyer to the hallway after I returned from a weekend business. Trip, that's when I called the police. Detective Janet Rodriguez listened carefully as I explained months of escalating harassment, the suspicious intrusions, and my growing fear. When I showed her the stack of citations, each more unhinged than the last, her professional demeanor hardened. She suggested a sting operation. Without concrete proof, she said, it would be my word against Karen's. Together, we came up with a plan. Hidden cameras were installed throughout my home. 2 officers would wait inside during the hours I was usually away. I would stick to my normal schedule, giving Karen every reason to think the coast was clear. We didn't know that Karen already had a key, one she'd quietly taken from the HOA files, left there years ago by the previous homeowner's contractor. The trap was set for Thursday evening, the same time I always walked my golden retriever, Bailey. At exactly 6:30 p.m., I made a show of leashing him up and leaving through the front door so any watching eyes would see me go. Officers Maria Gonzalez and James Thompson were already hidden inside, monitoring live feeds on a laptop in my office. At 6:47 p.m., the cameras caught Karen approaching my front door, glancing up and down the street before pulling a brass key from her purse. She slid it into the lock and stepped inside with the ease of someone who'd done it many times before. She headed straight for the living room, phone in hand, muttering under her breath about decor violations. She snapped photos of my bookshelf, complaining about inappropriate titles visible through the window. Then the coffee table, apparently too close to the rug. She was so absorbed in her self-appointed mission that she didn't notice the officers until Gonzalez cleared her throat. "Ma'am," Officer Gonzalez said evenly, "would you mind telling us what you're doing in this residence?" Karen spun around, color draining from her face. Her phone slipped from her hand, crashing to the floor and spiderwebbing the screen. This is an official HOA inspection," she stammered, waving her badge like it was a federal warrant. Officer Thompson asked calmly, "Do you have permission from the homeowner to enter?" Karen's voice rose, thick with indignation. "I don't need permission. As HOA president, I have full authority to ensure compliance. I'm protecting property values. Frankly, you should be thanking me." Her hands trembled as she rummaged through her purse and pulled out a laminated copy of the HOA bylaws, flipping frantically through the pages. Her manicured nails clicked against the plastic as she read aloud about the association's right to uphold standards. Officer Gonzalez cut her off, explaining firmly that HOA regulations were civil, not criminal, and that breaking into a home was still a crime. No matter what her rulebook said, that's when Karen panicked. She tried to leave, and that's when everything unraveled. Karen drew herself up, clutching her broken pride like a shield. "I'm done with this harassment," she snapped, turning sharply toward the door. But Officer Thompson stepped smoothly into her path. A flush of red crept up Karen's neck as she demanded to know whether she was being detained. When both officers confirmed that she was, her veneer of calm shattered completely. Her hands trembled as she snatched up her phone, dialing her husband with the speed of panic. "They're harassing me. Unlawful detainment. False imprisonment!" she cried loudly, making sure her audience, real or imagined, could hear. Her husband's voice on the speaker began as sympathetic bluster until the officers calmly explained the situation. The silence that followed could have swallowed the room. Officer Gonzalez's voice was firm but steady. "Ma'am, you're being detained for unlawful entry and criminal trespassing." As she reached for her handcuffs, Karen's indignation turned to desperation. "This is a misunderstanding," she pleaded. "I have a key. The HOA bylaws give me full authority to inspect homes." Her voice climbed higher with every sentence, edging toward hysteria. She demanded a supervisor, threatened to have their badges taken, and insisted her brother-in-law, a lawyer, of course, would sue the entire department. But no amount of shouting could stop the metallic click of the cuffs closing around her wrists. The walk to the patrol car would become neighborhood legend. Karen's protests echoed down the street as the officers led her away. She alternated between barking legal threats and invoking her HOA authority as though it were diplomatic immunity. Curious neighbors emerged from their houses, drawn by the spectacle. Margaret Ellis, 2 doors down, clapped as Karen passed, while Robert Chong stood on his lawn, phone raised, filming every second. Karen tried to hide her face, but her platinum blonde bob and monogrammed blazer made her impossible to mistake. She hissed about violations of privacy, completely unaware of the irony. At the station, Karen's behavior didn't improve. During booking, she refused to be fingerprinted at first, claiming the ink would ruin her manicure. She demanded a private holding cell, insisting that her position in the community made it inappropriate for her to be kept with common offenders. The booking officer, unimpressed and unmoved, processed her like any other suspect. When she was finally allowed a phone call, Karen didn't call her lawyer brother-in-law. Instead, she tried frantically to reach the mayor's office to report misconduct. Later, the duty sergeant told me she had never seen someone so completely incapable of grasping the seriousness of their situation. News of Karen Mitchell's arrest swept through Oak Ridge Estates faster than any HOA newsletter she'd ever published. By morning, every resident knew their self-appointed queen had been caught red-handed inside my home. That weekend's emergency HOA board meeting drew record attendance, standing room only. Former victims of Karen's tyranny stepped forward, sharing stories of intimidation, fines, and mysterious intrusions. The vote to remove her from the board was unanimous. Even her staunchest allies scrambled to distance themselves from the fallout. The board quickly passed new policies, including one requiring all HOA-held spare keys to be destroyed or returned to their rightful homeowners. But the scandal didn't end there. During criminal proceedings, prosecutors uncovered disturbing details. Karen had used old HOA keys to enter at least 3 other homes. She had built secret files on residents she considered problematic, complete with interior photos and handwritten notes cataloging supposed violations, both real and imagined. Her attorney negotiated a plea deal to avoid trial, but the damage was irreversible. The court sentenced Karen Mitchell to 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, and $10,000 in fines. I was there when the judge read the verdict. Karen stood rigid, face frozen in disbelief, as though her self-proclaimed authority should have shielded her from the consequences of actual law. The woman who once ruled Oak Ridge Estates, with an iron fist, was reduced to a cautionary tale about the limits of power. But the evidence presented at the hearing revealed something even darker. Investigators showed photos from her phone, images of dozens of interiors, including private bedrooms and personal spaces. Her home computer contained a detailed filing system ranking residents by their threat level. My file was marked with a red flag. Inside were notes about my divorce, my work hours, even guesses about my finances, based on the furniture I'd bought. Detective Rodriguez testified that Karen's actions went far beyond HOA oversight. This was criminal surveillance. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. Against her lawyer's advice, Karen insisted on taking the stand. For nearly an hour, she lectured the courtroom about the importance of maintaining community standards. She claimed her vigilance had increased property values and that residents like me were eroding the neighborhood's integrity. When the prosecutor asked bluntly, "Do you believe you have the right to enter any home within your HOA?" Karen answered yes without hesitation. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. As she went on, the judge's expression darkened. Karen compared her HOA badge to a police warrant, claiming her role as president was like being a neighborhood officer of the law. That was the moment everyone knew. Her reign of control, intimidation, and delusion was truly over.